All right, let's talk about the old school method to get to a 315 bench. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And all of this workout footage and this particular one comes from just two different sessions, my chest and tricep day and then a shoulder day. So on that day, yeah, I did a 315 for 3 sets of 3 that day, doing that at 47 years old. So speaking of old school, that is as old school as it gets right there, right? So some things I want to note when we talk about old school benching, notice that I'm not powerlifter benching, I'm bodybuilder benching. Like the old school bodybuilders, it's flat back, no arch, nothing crazy like that, right? This is just straight raw dogging it, right? Not trying to cheat, not use leverages, everything paused, no leg drive. We're just using pecs to drive it off my chest for work sets. So let's talk a little bit about how the old school guys, and old school guys, I'm talking like in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. A lot of those guys had big chests, they had big bench presses, and the way that they approached it was different. Again, I'm not going to keep doing videos on this topic because it's such a fascinating topic that I feel like so many younger lifters would benefit from, and a lot of them have implemented these methods and they thank me for it. So the old school guys use their chest to bench, right? So some things you're going to note, all my stuff is wide grip here. You're going to notice everything is paused, everything is wide grip, both the flat and the incline, okay? That is something to note right there. Like if you really want to get strong out of the bottom of a bench, it's all about that flat back. It's all about the pause because that's all chest and you have to use your chest. Got to use your chest to get it moving. Okay, so again, make a note. All my bench pressing is wider grip with a deep stretch on the chest. We're flat backing it without arches. We pause, we control. Of course, I hit the uprights there on that incline. But I want to make a note here. What did the old school guys always do? Like, what was their approach? Almost all of them, they like to do an even split of flat benching, incline, and overhead press. Why? Because of a couple of things. The incline really helps facilitate a stronger bench off the chest because the incline bench is so good for your pecs, particularly your upper chest. And for a lot of guys, when you're benching raw and you don't have a big arch and you use the chest to drive it off the bench, what happens? Right after it comes off the chest, the bar starts drifting towards your face. And an incline bench makes you really strong at that transition point. That's where you tend to miss the bench. Okay? You get it right off the chest, it tries to drift towards the face a couple inches, and then bam, it just drops. But if you get real strong at the incline, what happens? You push through that point. We learn to push through that point. So these guys all did it that way, and then they all wanted strong shoulders. Okay? So, and by strong shoulders, we don't necessarily mean all the rear delt and everything else. We're talking that front delt, that upper chest tie-in. Well, what helps get you there? Overhead pressing. And those guys didn't do the press like Mark Rippetoe press with that really narrow shoulder width grip, right, to where it's right at the edges of your chest, where you do the layback like a little closed grip overhead press with all that leg drive. They didn't care about the follow through at the top. A lot of those guys, they did it like this. Like, look how I'm doing my overhead press. Go back and watch Lou Ferrigno. Remember in Pumping Iron? Didn't his look a lot like this? That wide grip, just taking that pause, driving off the chest, coming to a stop on the chest on every rep. Okay? That style, because you'll get a lot of times these topics come up of the overhead press carrying over to the bench. And a lot of guys are like, man, it really carries over to the raw bench. And other guys are like, man, my press went up, but I didn't see anything. And when I used to press with that starting strength type style, it didn't carry over to my bench either. Right? Because the press becomes a different lift. But when you take this wider grip and you really care about that pause, when you really care about touching your chest, what happens? Those same characteristics you get from the incline carry over to your flat bench also. And they carry over to the incline. They build the incline. So then we build front delts. We build upper chest. All that stuff gets built. All those aesthetic muscles we think of. Because again, what are those old school guys are known for that? When you look back in the 60s, just look at the chest those guys had. The chest, the front delt tie-ins. They all had big, thick upper chest. They all had great like insertions and tie-ins between where their whole front delt and everything just tied into that. It's because they did all those lifts, right? They got strong at them too. They weren't just like, oh, let's just do it as pump work. No, man, those guys came and did heavy work on them. They had strong incline benches, okay? And when you realize how all that works for a raw bench press, what's going to happen? It helps you just get powerful off the chest. It helps you then with that follow through, that sticking point, that transition. If you get good at those other two lifts and you put just as much effort in them as you do your flat bench, when you go to do a max, what's going to happen? That sticking point on the raw bench, especially a flat back bench where you have to use the chest to get it started, and then the front delts and the pecs, upper chest really handle that transition point where you tend to miss it. You don't miss it anymore. You get good at it. And again, note, it's all paused. Everything we come to a dead stop. We pause on every rep, and then we drive. Power, power, power. Because again, if we're going to raw bench and we're going to bench the old school chest method, it's all about that power right off the chest. And the same thing, like let's talk about the tricep work. Long head of the tricep. You know, we can talk about lockout power on a bench all we want. We can talk about that lateral head, equip benching, closer grip benching. That lateral head of the tricep matters. But what about the long head? When you look at studies, EMG studies show that the heavier your bench gets, the closer you get to 1 rep max, the more the lateral head of the tricep gets activated. Problem is it's hard to use maxing to build your triceps, but you sure need the triceps. So the other thing you'll note there, those stretch position, like I do an incline there. A lot of those guys were big on those behind the head type extensions. The same idea. We're working that long head, and that long head helps you fire out of the bottom, doesn't it? Because that stretch position, you think about that stretch coming out of the bottom of a pause bench when you have a long range of motion because you're not arching. It's not about that lateral head locking. It's about you getting more power out of the bottom. And so when you get strong at that stretched position for the triceps also, guess what? What happens? It helps you get speed right off the chest because that tricep gets involved also. Okay, so let's recap this real quick. What are we looking for? Everything paused, everything flat back, wider grips, even mix of flat bench, incline, and overhead pressing, but overhead pressing in a manner that still uses a lot of chest. Again, the wider grip, the pause at the bottom, and then making sure we do some stretch stuff for that long head of the tricep. You get real good at doing those, and you'll be able to come in like the old school guys, bench 315 eventually, right, is a good benchmark, but do it bodybuilder style, right? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.